Tuesday, the 25th of March, 2025. Back. Please see it. You've been designated as the Karakia spokesperson for the group while you were away, George. Sorry to say, you were nominated.
Probably because I'm the greatest sinner. That basis, kei noi tātou. E te atu matakara o te takanga maka. E pā, e ani o pono ngā purupuki nei kia. A mātou nui tuatahi naua noho mai ki a mātou ngā korowai I waiho tia tiari ki hiu koraiti. Ana mea nā te tumanako, te pono, e te mea nui te aroha tētai ki tētai. Tēnei wā e pā e mahara tonu ana mātou ki o rātua mātou whānau e whakato ana e raro ngā korowai o te paurita. A mātou nui tūru nā noho atu ki o rātou te hauro te tinana me te hiringa te wairua. O ki ai rātou ki tā tātou tā, ki I koe ki ai ngā waiwai tapu mātou tūpuna. Tēnei mātou ake, tunu ake. Amen.
Okay, thank you, George. Just move to the apologies. Do we have any online? Anything come through to you?
No.
No. Okay.
Yes, just for leaving early. I'm leaving early, if that's okay.
Okay, can I have a move and a second for the apologies? Amy and John. All in favour?
Aye.
Okay, declaration of conflict of interest. We'll just do that as we go through the paper. Oh, you've got one, Deanne?
I think the three of us have one on 7.3 and or 7.5.
Okay, can you bring that up as we
Yep,
move
sure.
to that? Okay.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. I've raised my hand just to advise that I've been elected the chairman of Te Runanga Nui o Te Aupōuri, which is the settlement entity for the Te Aupōuri tribe. Just would like that noted in our minutes with the support of our councillors that conflict is noted. Kia ora.
Okay, so we go to item 5.1, confirmation of extraordinary council meeting. Minutes of the 19th of February 2025. Can I have a mover and a seconder? We've got Jack and Amy. Okay, all in favour? Aye. Okay, move to item 5.2. The receipt of the action sheet. Report from Chris Taylor, Governance Specialists. That action sheet being received. Can I have a mover? Jeff will move it.
So Marty moved it.
Marty second. Okay, it's good. Action sheet?
Yep. Just to acknowledge that I have tried to contact Martha Dover Samuels as per that action. I haven't been able to have a specific conversation, but I will do again today.
Okay, so everything else is complete. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Right.
Passed. Okay, item 6.1. Financial report to 28th of February 2025 by Tucker Skipworth. We've got the executive summary there. This report details year-to-date financial results to 28th of February 2025. The council has achieved year-to-date surplus of 4.3 million after transfers to the reserves, which is 1.3 million higher than the adopted original budget surplus of 3 million. Increase in surpluses from the last month is primarily attributed to the rise of salary savings at the end of February. So we've got one recommendation here that be received. And I have
Happy to receive it.
John
I can second that.
and Amy. Any discussion? John?
Not really, just that we keep on running at surpluses, which is fine, I suppose, but they're not designed to run at surpluses, are we?
Let's see, anything in that that's highlight that maybe we should be more heads up at the moment? Okay, Amy?
No, nothing specific, just on that point though. I think we're trying to deal with that through our approach to the annual plan. But I know Jack had some comments, but thank you for the report to the team.
Hey, no other discussion?
I have
Okay, Jack.
Yeah, the net savings of 428K on consultancy and contractors and environmental services.
Page?
On page 22. Year-to-date operational expenditure, favourable surplus of 1.5. I see third of that is this consultancy and contractors. Just wondering if that's putting it behind any of our programs. I'm just looking at the drilling down into the details. So lower than budgeted hill country fencing, lower than budget consultants and field equipment for testing, natural resources science programs. Just, I guess the question maybe for Ruben about, are these just timing related or seasonal stuff, or any of our programs imperiled?
For you, Chair. Yeah, the hill country erosion funding is definitely a phasing challenge that we have. We've got it all allocated. It's just a case of waiting for the invoices to come through and then paying them, and there's a seasonal component to that. I have been working alongside the science team around their operational expenditure for contractors. There is a bit of a lump at the end around some of the projects that they're working on, but there is some indication that there will be an underspend within their program, but it's not putting back any core.
Just one thing for Ruben on that. The fencing, is that held up by contractors, or is it just a timing with staff?
No,
it's signed off.
Yeah, could have, Chair. It's a combination of things. So sometimes at some seasons, it's just people will provide us the invoices a bit late, or so it sort of just depends on what's happening seasonally. At the moment, the drought might be affecting people's focus on the grant funds that we've provided them. So there's actually some environmental and social components that do actually start to factor in to delivering the funding. But as I said, the funding's been allocated. It's just those steps around delivering what's been funded, getting the invoices through, and then payment. Our experience, though, is year on year, there's very rarely an underspend within those grant funding budgets.
So the grant funding has been given out prior to the job being done?
No. So what we do is we, in this case, we provide a grant agreement.
Yep.
Applicant undertakes the work, they invoice us, and we pay it. There's a process there in that we go there to validate the work first. So there's some steps involved before the payment occurs. So sometimes there's some lag out there.
I think it could be that they're struggling to the other half, because normally it's 50%. So, some of these beef and sheep people, farmers, I would say, in a dry season like we're having, might be allocating money into feed instead of fencing. So I would say that's probably a lot to do with it. Now we had Joe Carr and Peter Lucas, and then Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to draw the council's attention to the fact that we haven't proceeded with doing the LiDAR surveying for the Waipapa activity area, where all the development is happening at Waipapa, because there's insufficient funds there. It needs $40,000 to do that work, and really need some support from council to get this job to happen. And given the surpluses we got, it's pretty minimal, the actual funding required to do that work.
So are you saying, Joe, that you're going to send a request to council? How do you want this to
well, I've spoken to Louisa and the CEO about it, and I had an understanding that we had sufficient funds to be able to get this work done. I've got to chair the meeting on Thursday, and I think I find it difficult to report to that committee that we are not proceeding with something as important as this. Yeah.
Okay, Joe, we've got Louisa in the room. She'd like to respond.
You're right, through the chair.
Yep.
Councillor Carr is correct. We part of the modelling. We brought the modelling forward, and which at the request of council, and part of the process around that modelling, one of the key priorities was to get the new height data into that model. We tested a number of surveyors to try and keep the cost as low as possible, to see whether or not they've got the capability to do it. And actually, what's come out of it is the only way which we can get those accurate heights into the model is to redo the LiDAR. We don't have the funding for that, which is around $40,000. We will be submitting a memo. It's literally sitting in my inbox now to review, to send to the CE for unplanned expenditure.
Okay, but that won't be ready before Joe's meeting on Thursday.
I will endeavour to get it to the CE today.
Okay, well, you might have a bit of luck there, Joe. Sounds like the wheels are turning.
Well, if the council we don't need a resolution to that effect. I don't think it's well within the discretions the CO's got. If we just convey a thumbs up to this process, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. I'll be back in touch with you, Joe. Okay, Peter Lucas.
Thank you.
Oh, kia ora. I just want to speak in support of what Joe has raised. I mean, it's a minimal cost considering the net salary savings of $1.3 million. I think that we can confidently say this needs to occur, and we could confidently say that this is something that we all support as elected members. It would be lovely for Joe to be able to attend that meeting on Thursday with some good news, which is that action will occur. So, I mean, whilst a resolution doesn't need to occur to move that along, I'm happy to move a motion that up to $50,000 be reallocated from from our surplus to see that the LiDAR survey is resourced and occurs within the required time frame. That's my first issue. So I just leave that there for consideration. But following on from that, I think it's important to note that the report speaks to net salary savings of 1.3 million due to vacancies across the council. And while this has contributed to our surplus, how does the council plan to balance cost savings with potential risks related to understaffing, service delivery, efficiency, and long-term workforce sustainability? So you will note that part of my reason for wanting to move things along with the LiDAR survey is also because we have the resourcing available to us to commit to that. So that's my question, and I'll just repeat it. So while the net salary savings of 1.3 million due to vacancies is a reality, and this has contributed to the surplus, how does the council plan to balance cost savings with potential risks related to understaffing, service delivery efficiency, and long-term workforce sustainability? Kia ora. And Mr. Chair, if we could come back to my resolution I put forward after the response.
And I'll second Peter Lucas's resolution. Thank you, Peter Lucas.
Yeah, John, I respond to that.
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora, Councillor Jones. Maybe if I could respond to both of those 2 points. First one around salary savings and our ability to deliver and deliver on our planned projects and budgets. Bruce and I have commenced now quarterly meetings with group managers to go through their expenditure in more detail so that we are able to keep a closer eye on impact of any underspends on our operational delivery. Our proposal is that we highlight through this report any significant non-delivery as a result of whether it's vacancies in staff or programs not proceeding. Happy to, if councillors wish to, that we can provide, and I can provide a report to council just summarising in a bit more detail as to where we're at with those, so that you've got some more awareness of that. With respect to the resolution, proposed resolution around Waipapa, I understand from Louisa that a briefing is coming to me today, and I understand the project and the proposal well. And I'm happy to support that through delegations. I just note that through standing orders for a resolution to be made as specific as this, we would need a paper to support it. As in, if you're going to make a decision around allocation of funds, you need a paper to come to governance that specifically outlines what the intent of the project is, what you're going to deliver it. And we don't have that paper on the agenda today. Again, though, there's a way forward here. I've heard clearly from councillors your support for it. I know the project as well, and provided everything's in check, would be happy to approve it.
Okay, any response? It sounds like it's pretty well supported, Joe. And Peter Lucas, are you still, because if you go to the resolution, it won't be done in time before your meeting on Thursday, Joe.
Okay, so we just have a secretarial note in the minutes of today's meeting. That would be probably the most effective way to proceed with this. Thank you very much.
Right.
And Mr. Chair, if we can also please note the CEO's commitment to getting this addressed. And I can't see any reason why this couldn't be addressed before Councillor Carr's meeting on Thursday. It's a very relevant and within delegation decision for the CEO to address in a timely way. Kia ora.
Okay.
Thank you.
We got John.
Two, I think.
John, you put your hand up before. Yep. You were next.
Thanks.
I just
John and then Marty.
in the support of the LIDAR work, because it's our core work, isn't really, and that area has changed so much. When you drive through Waipapa, how they've built up those later buildings on quite high bits of dirt, which will affect the flood when it comes through there. So it being out of date today is, I think, worth getting it done. And this was our core work. And when we see other towns and Darwin having problems, which maybe we could have foreseen, this is one that we can probably mitigate, possibly do work on this area if we need to. LIDAR comes back. Thank you.
Marty, in your area as well?
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy for what John has said. It's just almost BAU, or can be done that simply. Happy to go ahead with that. Now, the question I have regarding the accounting is the salary savings. Are we getting the work done? In which case, can we reallocate all those savings towards boots on the ground? Or if we're not getting the work done, what's the problem? It sounds as though local government is a bit of an aversion to being able to recruit staff. You could just give a bit of an expansion on that, John?
Kia ora, Marty. I don't think there's definitely not an aversion to recruiting staff. It's just a reality of sometimes the challenges of finding staff. Just as an example, we'll be going out for the third time to try and find an HR manager. Sometimes it's a tight labour market. So there are some other salary positions where there have been secondments made and some of the roles are vacant for 12 months before the person's coming back. In other situations, there have been lags in recruiting, and we're trying to make sure that our recruitment process is as tight as possible so that we're onto it as quickly as we can. From my korero with our managers, they have been reprioritising. So we've got a team. You might be able to reprioritise the most urgent stuff within that team, given vacancies that we might be holding at a time. I haven't had anything flagged with me, though, that there's a significant, we're not going to deliver on a key metrics or KPI as a result of our recruitment process and turnover of staff.
Yeah, I suppose it's along the lines of what Peter Lucas was saying is it putting stress on the organisation, on the GMs, for instance, and being able to juggle the balls.
With an organisation of our size, we do have constant turnover of staff. So yes, there can be challenges at different times to maintain different programs of work, things do need to sometimes get put on hold while we go through a recruitment or reprioritisation within those teams.
Yeah.
It is the reality of staff turnover and recruitment. Equally, I think it's important that we recruit the right staff rather than recruiting just because we need to fill a position. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Chairman, I'm satisfied that we get enough forward notice from the CEO of where staffing issues are a problem for program delivery. I'm confident that we're doing okay in that regard. I mean, it's an issue you've got to consider, but I'm confident that we're getting
Well, haven't been told that
And
program.
along those lines, just as a final comment, if we say making those savings, can those savings be diverted? Have we got the systems right actually? And so it's a leaner meaner, but getting the job done that you can't keep on running it that tight, or is it going to start wheels start falling off?
I think you'd start having wheels falling off, as in we've already, with approval from our auditors, to run a model where we're not budgeting for all of our staff.
Yeah.
And they've given us a window, and Simon, I can't remember what that window is. Is it 2.5%?
2.5% plus delayed starts and new recruits.
Yeah, thank you. So we operate a budget for salary of 2.5%, more percentage of our salaries that we've got staff that aren't actually budgeted for, to try and take into account the salary, the staff turnover.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I'd like to move on. Rick, you are next.
Yep. Now, I support Jack's comments on the staff, so I don't need to talk any more about that. I'm not happy that this an issue like the LiDAR is brought to council in this form. The CEO's pointed out that it should be done by a paper. I think it shows poor form from the councillors to bring it to a discussion like this without having a paper presented. If it's covered under the CEO's delegation, then it shouldn't have to come to council. And if it does need a paper, then to me, the decision should be waiting until the paper is presented to council. So if I'm not happy with a resolution like this, because that means any one of us could do the same thing, and I think that shows poor form. So it doesn't support the staff, and it doesn't support the process of how we democratically get these decisions made. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, well, I think we've given the delegation to Jono and Louisa. Rick, at the end of the day, so you made your point. Joe, you still got your hand up, or?
Yeah, we're just talking about the staff positions that are unfulfilled. Specifically, we were going to employ or have more resource in the catchment management area, engineering area, and I just wonder if that role had been filled yet.
But your engineer role?
We're just waiting for Louisa to respond.
Go through the chair. So the rivers team has been at full.
So the answer to that is yes, we've recruited it. So all of the roles that we get come through the LTP to be able to manage our onboarding for the first year. We budget sort of like it's about 25. It's about 25% of that year that we go. Actually, you're not going to get them all onboarded come 1 July, so we provide a window to be able to manage that. But yes, Joe, all of those positions that councillors will have approved through the long-term plan, staff will have actively been recruiting for them. I don't specifically know whether that specific engineer role is being filled or not, but I'm happy to come back to council with clarification on that specific role if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that would be helpful, because I know that that area of staff of activity, of council really struggling to get all their work done. Yeah.
I'll come back to you, Joe, within the week.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan, just got a hand up, and then we'll.
Page 22, unplanned gains now. The words unplanned is not quite correct, because even though you sold, it was something that the FAR gave commitment to when it went to a particular price. If we refer to that documentation, that it was planned per se, if just in, and it's just in timing, would be really important, because the word unplanned doesn't look desirable. Secondly, on that, and congratulations for selling them at a good price. The discussion around grants, the lower than planned grants, quite a good chunk, $3.6 million, and there are some key reasons there. What is our counterbalance to increase that, even though we do have surpluses, to bring home more money through the grants and
Through your chair, could you just repeat the question? What's like?
so you have lower than planned grants, you know, in the 3.6 that allows you in your revenue. What are we going to do about it?
I can't answer that question off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
John, I can.
Yeah.
Jono?
You raised two questions there, I think, Deanne. The first one around the unplanned, and yes, maybe it's a nuancing of the language.
Yes.
That might be helpful there. But I guess the point that it's trying to make, though, is that because we're reporting against the original annual plan budget, that because this wasn't included in the original annual plan budget, from an accounting perspective, they were looking at it as unplanned. But yes, totally accept the point that you've made.
That it was a, yeah.
Yep, kapai. The grants and subsidies, some of the lower than planned grants and subsidies in our operational revenue, it's a combination, as you can see further down in the table, around some of it's phasing, some of it is delivery. The point, though, is that we do have a program around, because a large proportion of our operation is done by grants and subsidies, and it might be the point that you're raising is that national government has set clear direction that the tap is slowly getting turned off on their provision of grants and subsidies out into the regions and through regional councils. So yes, we've got a specific work stream within our operational team and through ELT around okay then, what is the phasing of our grants and subsidies and when do they run out, and what are we going to do? What's our transition in that situation? For example, we've got PF 2050. We've got a number of funding cliffs that come up shortly around that. We've got Cody dieback. We've got the highly erodible hill country fund. So all of those are funds that we rely on to sustain our operational delivery. And yes, there's a process of advocacy to ministers and to the Crown around what the benefits are of these programs and what is being delivered on the ground. Equally, there will need to be a discussion with Council shortly around to what degree is Council willing to pick up the tab moving forward if those taxpayer funded projects cease. Is it a turn the tap off completely, and then we need to go through and say, okay, then what does it mean for our staff? What does it mean for our partnership with our Te Tiriti partners and our communities around delivery on the ground? Unfortunately, the funding cliff isn't immediate. We've got a window of opportunity here, but it's a very real issue that not only NRC, but regional councils and others, iwi and hapu and other community groups are facing around the drying up of central government funded environmental projects.
Thanks, John. And my final question through the chair is, are we comfortable with the annual leave balance projected in the report, and what is the percentage that we must carry at any one time?
You mean, is it a risk to have to pay out, Deanne?
Yes.
Okay. Yep, go John.
Sure, Chair. We've got a policy around maximum, this is stretching my knowledge here on the spot, but I'm going to have a crack, and if I get it wrong, Bruce might correct me. And I said that so he's listening to what I say. So we've got an annual leave policy which provides that people should manage their annual leave up to a maximum of 37 days.
30-ish, I think it is. Yeah,
30-ish.
30.
So we've basically got a policy that sets a cap of how many annual leave days that someone should be accrued, because you're right, it's a debt on our balance sheet, and with a staff the size of ours, it's a reasonable size debt that sits there on our balance sheet. We need to account for that so that we can pay it out if required, and we actively manage anyone that exceeds that cap of annual leave. There are some staff within the organisation that are over and above the annual leave, and we have leave plans in place with those staff to get them back within the policy settings.
Yes, Simon?
I was just going to add to what Steve was saying. In the last 2 years, we've been about $1.7 million, which was down from the prior year, which was 1.9.
Thanks, Simon.
Okay. I think discussions are finished. Okay, so we have a mover and a second, John and Amy. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? See. Okay, we go to item 6.2, page 7 of the agenda.
Keen to move this.
Yep. Okay, so we have Simon Crabb in the room and we've got a mover, which is Jack Crawl.
And I'd like to ask a question that I'd like to ask our 3 independent advisors their views on this paper.
Okay, I'll just ask for a seconder. Jeff? Second? Okay. Righto, so you got that question again?
I'd just like to ask the 3 advisors their views on this move. It seems prudent to me, but I'd defer to your greater knowledge.
Oh, look, I've got a couple of statements around this. I think in support of moving it to earn further money. It's always good to do that. However, later on in the papers, you've got a request for a redistribution of the worm farm of 124k, which I think, to be honest, through the chair, probably could take it out of here instead of redirecting if, not that it's a really small amount of 124k. But, the PDs at the moment are going well, a little bit better than the markets in some places. So for me, at 4.5% return on your investment for a 90-day TD is not too bad. I'm not really sure what you've negotiated, but to me, it's a sensible thing to do. But that's my only hook, is that some of it get put to the kalupra, because it doesn't seem sensible to shift something from one place to another when you've got quite a nice surplus that you can take from.
I think we'll come to that. I think there's another process that if we don't follow, we might lose it
to
government. That is a little bit different to that, but we'll come to that. Okay, any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd support that totally.
Yep.
With the political situation as it is now, that let's lock it in and bring it out.
George, you're going to comment?
Well, there's some better advice or some better news this morning on the NASDAQ in particular. That term deposits may be recovering on the back of some of the high tech. And that President Trump may be taking a more broad approach, or a less dogmatic approach to his imposition of tariffs. And so term deposits will be looking up for a short period of time. My quibble would be, how does Northern Inc. feel about its reduced funding contribution, and are they going to be able to cope across their work plan for the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, Simon, that's why we got you in the room. Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Your paper.
Northern Link funding contribution won't reduce. We'll still pay them what we're meant to pay them. It's just that the gains that I'm going to reimburse my payment to Northern Link are being taken out and held until August. So I'll still pay the amount out, but because we're running surpluses, I don't need the gain until August. Also, Chair, just adding on to that, I did speak to Jonathan Erickson yesterday just to confirm things were holding up well. And he said, yes, they were, and he recommended we continue with this de-risking strategy. So that was yesterday.
All right, just scanning the room. There's no other communication around this issue. Okay, so I've got a mover and a second to Jack and Jeff. All in favour?
Aye.
Oh,
Sorry.
I just have one question. I'm in favour, but it's really just for clarification, and it's around market volatility risk. And it's really just like the report mentions that the decision to withdraw the 2.98 million is aimed at reducing the risk of market downturns, eroding the gains already made. But what contingency plans are in place? And this has kind of already been asked by our advisors, but I just wanted to ask what contingency plans are in place if financial markets perform unexpectedly well after the withdrawal, potentially resulting in lost investment gains. And it's really, I was just hoping to hear a comment on that particular scenario. Kia ora.
okay, it's by looking at Simon. He's the expert in the room.
Well, it is a risk of de-risking. you're taking money out of the markets and putting them to a fixed income source, term deposits that are just going to give us a certain amount of money. We don't want to absorb a market downturn, but on the other hand, there is a risk that we'll lose the upside. But bear in mind, our gains have outperformed budget considerably to this point in time. So probably there's a heavier risk that we lose gains than make more. It makes sense.
I think, Peter, sorry, through the chair, my support of this is primarily because of the key risks with the geopolitical things happening at the moment. And the upside could be really a big downside very soon, or either. It's too seesawy. If I was to, I know that's not very financially technical, but it's too seesawy.
But on the back of that, we're only going for 4 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not a long-term strategy. You happy with that, Peter Lucas?
Kia ora, and yes, I am in support of the decision. Kia ora tātou.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay, received.
Thank you.
Okay, we go to 6.3. Which is private shares revenue increase for bus contract. We've got Chris Howland, right?
I'm happy to move this.
All right, I'll second it. So you can get quick off the rank. Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder, Rick and Jack. We've got 2 recommendations, and the second recommendation has 2, an A and a B. We've got Chris Powell in the room for any discussions. Okay, Rick.
We've had discussed this at the meetings. We knew it was coming. I think it's been reduced for quite a long time. It is, unfortunately, it has to go up. It is easier to go up by $1. So in this case, 50%. So I don't think there's anything we can do about it if we want to try and get the routes more financial. So I'm fully supportive of it. Thank you.
Okay, Jack.
Yeah, just to support Rick. Staff have been through this in every different permutation possible. There's really no other way around this. The government, the Minister of Transport has actually has directed public transport authorities to increase revenue from fare box recovery. So we don't have an option. We've got to increase fare box recovery. Either we've got to increase patronage by like 40 to 50%, or we've got to put up fees. So look, they're just returning them to 2018 levels. I think the adult patronage won't drop at all. I do worry about poor families that are sending kids on school buses that were paying $10 a week per child will now be paying $20 a week per child. That's a lot of money. If you've got 3 kids coming into school every week, you're going to have to find another $30 a week. And so, but we'll just have to wear it. I'm sorry. We may have to have some appropriate media around this, I think, Jono.
Okay, Marty.
Yeah, just accepting what the Minister says, but there's a great difference between the rural areas where there's a sparse population and large, long distances to travel. I think we really should be speaking up loudly. I guess we are speaking up loudly to central government, just emphasising that, though, is that regional and it does need support, whether it be from not increasing price or subsidies. I know that that's abhorrent to the central government, to any central government to give subsidies, but really how else can it be done for people to make it affordable? Because the higher you put the prices, the less it's used, the less people get into those services that they need, and so it's just a downward spiral.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in some ways we're the victims of our own success because our public transport patronage is good. It's very, very good. It's back up to slightly ahead of pre-COVID, I think. So, our staff are doing a great job, by the way, and working well with NRC, with WDC, and providing the service and running the service. And we're getting increased patronage and got extra routes. And I think in some ways it was an easy move for government, but we don't have an option, Marty. They've told us to increase the fare box revenue, or else we imperil the subsidy we have.
Just as a final remark, then accepting that in Whangarei, but in the rural areas, Aikoi, Kirikiri, Whahia, etc., I'm going to guess that is unaffordable, uneconomic. And yet, really, if we're going to try and promote people using public transport, then there has to be that support.
Okay, so we've got a response by Chris Powell before we go to Amy. Chris?
So thank you, sir. Through the chair to Councillor Bonnie. The percentage increase we were given by NZTA was in fact higher than what we're going in for. And we argued that exact point with them.
Yeah.
That we're a rural area, very dispersed populace, low socioeconomic areas, and big increases could not cut it. And they agreed and they reduced what they'd originally asked for. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Cheers.
I think John.
I mean, go first.
No, John, you did have your hand up.
Okay, this transport thing is, we've got no choice, I agree, but we need to look back. I don't know if we are doing such a great job because, Dargaville, for example, doesn't have anything, it hasn't even got a taxi. Yet when I was a kid, there were taxis, there were buses, and went to Auckland, buses went to Whangarei. I think maybe because our transport system, our private transport we have today is a lot cheaper than possibly what it was back then. But we want to get people on buses in the rural areas, like Marty said. I think things have to change. And maybe that our cars are so cheap today. Our fuel is probably cheap compared to what it was in the 70s. That's probably why people aren't using public transport or supporting it. And they've tried, it's not lack of effort. It's it just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow on from Jack's comments around the potential implications for this, particularly for our school children who are using these buses. And really proud that NRC has supported. There's a contingent who come from Unarahi into the city for their schooling, and they're not supported by the ministry's free buses. And so I know NRC has worked to kind of ensure that those kids can get to school. So I just am concerned about the potential effect that cost increase in such a hard time for our families could have on their ability for children to get to school. So my question is, are we going to be collecting data? I presume because it's all, rider numbers or whatever you call it, we will get the information, but sort of beyond our mandate here, but there's a pretty big implication if it is affecting school attendance. So just wondering, I know you guys already work with the schools a bit on some other issues. Can we kind of have an integrated approach to seeing what effects this change has over the remainder of the year?
Yep. Okay, Chris, want to respond to that?
Sorry, Councillor Amy. Yes, we do. We have a system in place that can tell us how many passengers boarded at every stop on every route, whether they were child, adult, or super gold card, and monitor every stop, yes.
So maybe can I ask our committee members that we come back to it after 6 months or something and have a little look and make sure we take a moment to analyse whether there has been an impact, I guess.
Of course, yeah. I think. Well, I guess we'll be doing that as a matter of course anyway. We get the what Urban Transport Committee gets up to date figures on patronage at every meeting. So that'll be done automatically. But we will analyse that. Thank you.
Okay, we've got Peter Lucas and then Tui Shortland.
Kia ora, my contribution focuses on the adverse impact on the poor regarding the private share revenue increase. And I'm just wanting us to consider what exemptions or subsidies for vulnerable groups might look like, particularly those people that actually use the bus to get to work, to get to school, to get to North Tech, to get to the hospital, to get to doctor's appointments. And while the total mobility scheme and community connect scheme are excluded from the fare increase, has the council considered additional targeted financial relief, such as fare discounts or subsidies, or low-income individuals, families, and students, for example, who do not qualify for these programs? I mentioned that because partial subsidization of fare increases is something that's worth considering, given the council's $4.3 million year-to-date surplus, which is $1.3 million above the budget. There are a few ways it could meet the poor halfway while negotiating a balanced financial and sustainable contribution towards other options. So I wanted to mention that because the revenue sharing model is perhaps something that we could consider. Kia ora.
Okay, I think Jack will bring that through his committee next time.
Yeah, well, I think a very good points, but the solutions to those are essentially political because the government has decided that unless you increase our fare box revenue, our subsidies will be cut. So we're kind of like we have Hobson's choice here and on this particular matter. I think what you raise is that there's maybe another answer that another type of service might be provided along with like the disabled service, but I don't know how much work's ever been done on that. That really is a mare's nest, isn't it? I don't know. We'll take that into consideration at our next public transport meeting, I think.
Just following on from that, Mr. Chair, and in response to what Jack has mentioned, can I ask what communication or negotiation with those that have issued these new rules have been made or advanced by the committee responsible for this piece of work?
Yeah, I've got a response from Chris Powell. Chris?
Sorry, through the chair and to Councillor Jones, there has been quite a bit of dialogue with NZTA, bearing in mind that this directive came down through the government policy statement from the government, who directed NZTA to do this. They've taken a fairly hard line on it in the fact that the government wants more user pays. As I said, Councillor Jones, we did fight them down to a lower level. Sort of whether we can push them any further, I really don't know, because they've obviously got a figure they've got to meet too. So yeah, I've sort of detailed in the minutes of all the meetings we've had with them, which has been quite a few, and I can put hand on heart and say we fought hard for Northland, particularly the poorer areas.
Thank you for the response. In closing, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to encourage us to consider what targeted fare subsidy might look like, considering we've got a sizable surplus and we have rates increases. The elderly people, those over 65, I understand, in a different situation, but I think it's worth us giving this some focused attention. Kia ora.
Okay, Tui Shortland.
Kia ora koutou. I cannot support this increase. As someone who takes the bus myself, I see firsthand the families, the elderly, the youth who rely on these services. For many, this is not a convenience, it's their only option. Raising prices during the cost of living crisis will only push our most vulnerable further to the margins. Council must find a way to fund public transportation that uplifts our people, not burdens them. Yes, central government sets certain funding parameters, but to say we have no choice is misleading. We do have choices. You've worked on choices. We have choices in how we respond, how we prioritise equity, and how we protect our communities. Regional councils are not powerless. We can push back, seek exemptions, use reserves, or develop transitional models that support low-income whānau. So I really think that we're just being, we're not taking an ethic of care here, just turning up today and saying we're stuck in this situation. The government's direction may set a cost recovery target, but it doesn't prescribe how or when we do that. We have financial tools, legal room and political will. This council, I would think, should have political will to protect our people. If we allow austerity logic to override equity, we're not serving Te Tai Tokiro. I propose we freeze this fare increase and work with staff to find a way, and Peter Lucas, those who are interested in working in this manner, and we prepare a proper equity impact statement. Because the claims I've heard that this won't impact on adults, I don't know what kind of adults you're interacting with on the buses. But I can tell you this will impact on Māori communities, this will impact on rural areas, this will impact on youth and elderly and people with disabilities. So that's my stance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, we've got a mover and a seconder. These recommendations are on the table at this moment, so we need to vote on it. If it's not passed, then it will come.
Ask a follow-up question. Can I just ask, so probably it's a question of you, Jono. What latitude do we have here? I understand we've been required to do this, but yes, the point Tui's making is how specifically tied is the requirement from government?
And the time.
Yeah.
Kia ora through you, Mr. Chair. Some of that answer I'd need to get Chris to confirm, particularly on the timeframes aspect of it. The council could, and I'm looking at Chris as I speak, given this isn't something that I've got a depth of knowledge of, but council could potentially choose to, rather than raise fare box revenue, increase the rate for public, the rate for that we use to provide our current funding for public transport to cover the fare box revenue. You could, in the short term, so that would be a long-term solution. You could, in the short term, potentially look to your reserves that you've got. I'd need to go and get some advice around allocation of our surplus towards it, as in to see if there are funds that aren't specifically targeted rates for a particular purpose that's not public transport. There could be some options, though, if the council chose not to raise the fare box. But I guess just, Chris, I see your hand up there. When you're on, whatever you're going to add to it, if you could also provide some clarification just on timeframes for us as well, please.
I think, Sarah, it's also important to realise, whilst I fully understand what the councillors have said, the cost of increase in the bus industry alone since 2018 is 27%. And that's fairly high to operate, or for operators to absorb. So that was another reason that they're pushing hard for it. Thank you.
So, if I can, Mr. Chair. So, Chris, council needs to have a decision on this by what date, sorry?
Preferably by the end of the month, sir.
And what happens if there's not a decision by the end of the month?
NZTA will come back to have discussions with us, I'm sure. The only thing is, I'm certainly not trying to shout wolf here. We need to protect future revenue streams. Mm-hmm. And that is one thing we must remember. Unfortunately, we have been through a past which has sort of contributed where fares have been cut to nil during the living crisis. During COVID, there was huge subsidies put in. The new government came in, stopped it all, and now saying, no, there must be more funding coming in. So we've been caught between that rock and a hard place of political, national political to and fro.
And I'd like to back up, Chris. You did bring a paper to us as a workshop. Yeah. We have workshopped this. None of these questions were brought up. None of them were debated before this came to the council. So you told us by, I would say, within a week, this needs to be implemented. So I don't think, this should have been brought up previously and we should have debated it before it got to this level. So, Jack?
I did raise the concern in the workshop, though.
Yeah.
The affordability is an issue.
Look, I think the concerns of Councillor Shortland are well articulated, and I agree with them. But the thing is this: we have been handed a political decision here. The minister has said you increase your fare box revenue. It's got nothing to do with the subsidy. Increase your fare box revenue. With the implicit statement, if we don't, we'll lose some of the subsidy that we already have. I think that's potentially in peril. So it's obviously something we need to hang on to as much as we can. If we can do something else for using a different mechanism, then let's look at that. But in terms of fare box revenue, we've been instructed we need to increase it, otherwise we won't be getting the subsidy we're already getting. I'd just like Chris to confirm if that's actually the fact. If we don't increase our fare box revenue, do we put existing subsidies at risk?
There is the chance we can, yes, sir. And I think just on top of that, all councils have been put through this. This is not just the NRC. This is right throughout the country. Most all councils are looking at increases or have increased, but they're all going down the same road. So yes.
Councillor McDonald said, could we cover that fare box revenue part?
Does it have to come from outside of council, or do we just have to increase the amount?
It has to, sorry, if you read the GPS, it has to come from outside the council. We cannot put any additional financial strain on national or local ratepayers. Okay, that is in there.
Sorry, that's what I was trying to clarify before. So thank you, Chris.
So it's options choice, folks.
Yeah. So we've got, I need to line this up. Tui, have you got your hand up still?
Yes, thank you. I just didn't want, because I can hear the tone of the room, and even though I want it noted that I'm voting against this, I did also say the equity impact is, assessment, because in the paper you haven't assessed impacts correctly, and you're making assumptions that this will not impact on existing users. And I'd like that to be measured. I'd like the impacts to be measured. Well, here we are trying to be responsible for economic development, and we're putting up barriers. We're supporting the barriers of getting the low-income families, getting them to work, getting them to the library so they can do their CV, getting them to go to Pack and Save because it's the cheapest place where they can shop. Like, let's not just say, oh, well, our hands are tied, let's move on and never talk about this again, because we are responsible for economic development. And these guys are ratepayers too. They're ratepayers too. So we can't say, oh, well, let's just protect the guys with the buses and let's protect, we can't ask the ratepayers for more. We're literally asking ratepayers for $30 more. And where are they going to get that? Honestly, where are they going to get that? So I've said my piece, and please record me as opposing this.
I'd like to move that we let the motion lie. We've had 3 suggestions of taking it from rates, subsidised or reserves. I don't know, I'd like us to hold our breath and talk to, because central government will come to us, or NZTA will come to us, to see if we can find some other options, whether it's the Department of Social Welfare that are going to be able to support those that are unable to pay it, so that we are able to, instead of having fewer people getting on the service and therefore saying, okay, we're going to shut the service, we should be looking at every opportunity to try and continue.
We just heard from Chris Powell, this will put our service at risk.
It does. I've heard also chance. I heard he say chance. So whether it's a chance of something that's happening, there's also a chance of trying to get something through. So I'm saying let's push it to the limit. I want us to hold on for as long as possible and try and exhaust every option that we've got to be able to make the system viable in the long term.
Okay, so you're at the workshop. Why didn't you bring this up at the workshop?
Well, we're having a lot of information coming to the table of potential possibilities of how we might be able to help.
What extra information is there from our workshop?
I'm going on what I've heard today, and the possibilities of being able to look at other options, being able to help service those people. Okay, Amy, you got your hand up?
Can I suggest a way forward which might be balanced? So to protect the subsidy, which is essential for our region, we need to maintain that government subsidy because it's the only way the buses are affordable, full stop. We could move forward with this recommendation as it stands, but have a secretarial note that there's a commitment in some shape and form to look at how we as a council, we're going to have to do a workaround because they've required the money to come from the fare box, right? So we can't cover that ourselves. So we're going to have to do some sort of workaround, which goes back to what Peter Lucas was saying around how we would identify who this is going to affect negatively and then find a way to try and reduce that effect. So I get what you're saying that we workshopped it, but the reality is until we've made the decision, we're able to keep, building to make a better decision. So I could support this, understanding the politics of it, provided there's a commitment for us to have another look at how that impact is going to be dealt with, and that could be a workshop or it could go to your committee, transport.
Well, I think a secretarial note to Jack's committee through Chris Powell
I think better than
Well,
secretarial
committee,
recommendation.
would be what they're, voted in to do.
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe making sure the invite it's on the agenda clearly, so those of us who are really concerned about this and who our communities are going to be highly affected can make sure we get there for that particular session. Thank you. That's my suggestion.
Did you have a hand up, Dan?
No, I mean, I duly support your concerns around the impacts of increased prices, so not really supportive of that in terms of the general budget public. But I think there is other possible mechanisms that you could potentially do. I know that youth workshop, sorry, I wasn't at that workshop, didn't get the invite, but that's okay. Was around where we have got surpluses at the moment. If you look at a short-term solution of you accept it because you need to, because you've got to get that other subsidy, and don't steer me down in the back here, you subsidise 6 months of it while you come up with your best solution, because you have to accept what the government's saying to Wellington, or they won't give you that subsidy. So can I suggest that what did you say, Chris, it's $500,000 for the year?
Yeah, it's 500,000 fare box revenue.
Yeah.
I think we must remember that all our contracts are on a net contract.
Yeah.
So it's total cost minus the fare box revenue. NZTA then pay 54% of the gross. We pay the remainder.
So whatever 50% of that is, whatever a 6 month period of that is, you contribute out of your surpluses that you've just acquired to cover off why you do this discussion point. Just a suggestion through the chair.
We were just told we weren't able to do that.
We weren't able to do that, Dan. That's what Chris let us know.
I'm sure if you.
But should we not resolve it here? Should we give it to the committee?
Yeah.
Go away and then come back in the next month or two with a resolution. Like Jack said, that's what they're there for. Chris has obviously taken it on board, our direction. I'd like to wrap it up. We've got Joe on board.
You're on mute, Joe.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, it's Hobson's choice, this one, and it's nationwide. And I think Jack summed it up pretty well. The real issue with our buses, I believe, and opportunity and the issue is the school bus service. Because if we provide a really effective school bus service, especially in Whangarei, we actually address a lot of congestion. And I'm not sure the rules for the education department. I think you've got to walk 2.5 km. It could be before you're allowed a ride, but when you think about the Onarahi route, etc., that effectively should be an education department school bus run. So I think that's an area that we really want to dig into, and I think the Department of Education is probably not meeting the fullest commitments it could for our Whangarei passenger bus service. It's the other thing is I've tried to get staff interested in decent signposting throughout the Mid-North and Hokianga bus services so that people actually know where the services stop and start, and it's the best kept secret up here, our bus service, and we should do more to promote it so it's used and becomes more viable. Thank you.
Okay, Marty, you're
just
the last.
If Amy, if you're happy to move that, or I think you've recommended a middle way forward, but I'd like it as a recommendation rather than just as a secretarial note. And I don't think that everybody needs to be subsidised in the same way as not everybody needs to be subsidised for rates, and yet there are people that default. There are some people who just cannot afford. So I don't know how to phrase that as a recommendation that the committee.
Well, you're the one doing it, Marty. You'll have to put a recommendation up. You can't ask for a table to come up with a recommendation.
All right, I'll move as a recommendation 3 then, that the committee look at how to have a fair subsidy for those that cannot afford to use, cannot afford the rates increase.
I've put something in the chat, Mr. Chair, that might be helpful. And it might be something, this could be an and thing. If we are forced, of course, as regulated to make these amendments, there's still opportunity, which I think our advisor was raising to our attention, and Marty in his own way, which speaks to expanding fare discounts and subsidies. For example, we could have we could recommend that our staff look into public transport pass programs, and that could include a consideration for low income monthly passes. That could mean that we offer heavily discounted bus passes for those on government benefits or earning below a certain income threshold, which we know impacts on people's ability to pay rates at some point in their payment planning as well. I do think that Marty's raising something that's important for our consideration, notwithstanding that we do need to make a decision. But that doesn't prevent us from taking this opportunity to think about how expanding fare discounts and subsidies could improve accessibility by adjusting our approach in this situation. Kia ora.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of moving this on.
I've just got Chris Power.
Okay.
To respond, Chris.
Sorry, to Councillor Craw, through the chair. Just to make a point here, the bus working group, which we meet with, covers Whangarei. So anything and everything we discuss through them will be confined to the Whangarei area. Anything outside of that would have to be between councillors and the staff. So far north.
Workshop. Yep. Mr. Chairman, in the interest of moving this along, may I suggest recommendation 3, that staff investigate other options for assisting public and school transport and report back to the Whangarei Public Transport Working Party.
We can't fix it here, but we need a recommendation if you want to look into it.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's regional though, so it's not just to the Public Transport Working Party, it's that we have a workshop.
Okay, report back to a workshop. Okay, we hold a workshop. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Chris, that
One last question.
Oh.
What date will the fare? So we have to make this decision. Is there a date that we have to raise the fares by?
We are looking to have everything ready for implementation on the 1st of July. It's going into the new funding.
Is that the requirement? Yeah. Is there a government requirement for a
They're
date?
obviously looking for as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Which is
what
they come up with. But my recommendation, our staff's recommendation, is to start as of the new financial year.
Okay, so Nadi, your resolution is you're happy to hold it. I want to go with Jack's.
So sorry, Rick. Councillor Stolwood moved it. Councillor Cross seconded it. The only way you're going to get that over the line if you both agree, and I understand Rick has just left. So
which means we can't vote, and you can't have a motion on the table, Mr. Chair. Oh, he's still here.
Yep.
Are you happy with that wording, Councillor Stolwood?
Can you read it out again for Councillor Stolwood?
That staff investigate other further options, I would say, wouldn't I? Further options for assisting public and school transport.
Affordability.
Sorry?
Affordability.
Transport affordability.
I think it needs to speak to the affordability and the vulnerable communities as well.
Speaking now is
the heart of the conversation.
The staff investigate further options for assisting public and school transport affordability, and a workshop be held for council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rick, you happy with that?
Yeah. So we're voting on the 2 now?
3.
3 now.
3. There's 3. So you have to agree for the amendment?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And then all in favour?
Yep.
All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Well, I have said I would vote against, and if I have to vote against all 3 of them because I won, you're leaving me with only one choice.
And me
okay,
too.
they were all taken together, 3. Okay. Move on to 7.2. No, 7.1. 7.1, reallocation of remaining fanworm removal funding to wider Kalupa surveillance. We've got Caden in the room. We've got a couple of options here. We've got 2 recommendations that the report of the remaining fanworm removal funding of the wider surveillance by Caden, Biosecurity Manager, Marine, dated 10th of March 2025 be received. And then option 2. Do we have a mover?
Yeah, move.
Yeah, and a seconder. Okay, all right. Okay, any questions for Caden?
You want to speak to it?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'll through the chair. I'll take it as read, but I will add that given the discontinuation of MPI funding and just the rapid expansion and recruitment of Mediterranean sandworm in the Opua Basin there, really the amount of funding, the quantum of funding we have won't really make an impact. Not saying that staff aren't going to continue to do as much as they can, and that will be increased hull surveillance and behaviour change with vessel owners. So letting every vessel owner who has high biofouling and recruitment of Mediterranean fanworm know that they are not allowed to move and that they have to clean before they do go. And really, there's just no excuse in that area, given the high amount of facilities for boaties to move around. And I guess I'll add, even if it wasn't for the lack of MPI funding, we've seen a exponential growth in this species. It's just in high reproductive nature, coupled with environmental conditions. We had some 1 in 100-year floods where all of the other biofouling was killed back, and the high sort of quantity, high recruitment of this species just meant that it came back with force. So, yeah.
Yep. Okay, Marty.
Just as a question, Caden, if fanworm are allowed to have their wave, what is going to be the impact, final impact on Bay of Islands?
What we see with Mediterranean fanworm, they really prefer artificial substrates. While we will see them on the natural rock, we will see them dominate areas with man-made structures. So most certainly could have impacts on oyster farms. The greater environmental impact is really hard to determine, but most likely pretty sporadic on natural environments, high density on. Yeah.
So just a little bit further than that, could it be that the reason that there are man-made structures is that because where boats gather? So that you don't tie onto a rock.
Yeah, and it's also the opportunistic nature of non-Indigenous marine species. They really, native species are shown to really prefer settling on natural rock. They've got this evolutionary recognition with it. The reason introduced species are so good at doing what they do is because they're just high plasticity. They can settle on anything.
I guess what I'm loath to rob from Peter to pay for. Just because Kalupa has become a higher priority doesn't mean to say that fanworm is not also a priority. We haven't had a big flood, the water's warmer, so it's ideal conditions for a fanworm. If we let it get a real head start, then we may never get it back. And I wonder if perhaps there's been less diver hours because it's been diverted to Kalupa for the last year, I suppose, that we've not been able to look so much at. We've been diverted away from fanworm. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, we did put in the same amount of effort last year. However, we have seen the population shoot off. And I will note that this is the last year of funding from from our LPTP
Yeah.
for managing that specific population in Opua. And yeah, again noting it is a huge area where often it is 10 to 20 centimetres viz. So really uninhabitable conditions for our divers. There is always going to be significant miss rates.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how much money you've got, Caden, as I understand it. We want birds, you can't get on top of it. It will attach itself to tyres on the bottom. You don't even know it's there. You want to clean this whole marina. There's a tyre over there full of bandworm poof.
Exactly. So a stronger effort needs to be put into managing the vectors, and that's managing the boats themselves.
Well, I would like to see that 124 put, as you say, if it's a waste of time or if it's a dead end in that marina space. Keep away and knowing that we're not going to get rid of it there, but at least have that, keep that funding towards making sure it doesn't get out into the wider area. So that's why I would prefer to have that funding, 124,000 come from another source, but still retain this as a lower priority than Kalupa at the moment, but still as a priority that it should still receive that funding. I don't want to see it diverted.
There is no MPI funding next year to keep this going.
We wouldn't be able to do anything.
Yeah.
My question, Mr. Chairman, might help with this, Marty, is can you assure us that our work and surveillance and protection of non-infected areas will not be affected at all? We're still going to keep Whangaroa and Nonganui free and all that.
Yes.
That won't be affected at all.
Sorry, we'll say we do have a small population in Whangaroa. In recent years, there has been detections there. We will continue to provide the same amount of hull surveillance and continue to work with boaties to limit that spread.
Are you reasonably happy that the surveillance with hull inspection surveillance and other harbour surveillance we're doing is adequate at this stage, and you don't need extra money to increase that kind of surveillance?
The hull surveillance we do is significant and enough. I guess we need the likes of we need the clean hull plan. We need the likes of Auckland to be doing exactly the same as we do, so their boaties know if they've
external.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it's kind of.
I'll note that over Christmas we surveyed 200 vessels on anchor, so that represents our moving fleet, and 85% of those had clean hulls. So others had tiny bits of growth on them, but we are seeing a very clean moving fleet out there.
I think, Marty, on the back of your conversations, we are lobbying really hard for the clean hull plan.
Yeah.
Like really hard.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the back of that,
This is in the treasure chest for this one. I'd really still like to get the 124 from another source rather than taking this way, so that's there in the piggy bank.
Marty, we wouldn't know how to spend that money, our own money on Kalupa. If we did, it wouldn't be adequate to make a dent in what we've got at Opua. So I don't know.
I've said, okay, forget about Opua as the last cause. That's but if that's ring fenced and we're keeping the surveillance around the rest of it.
not enough for the rest of it. That's what we've heard from Caden.
Yeah.
We're quite comfortable with what we're doing. We're doing a good job. Whangaroa is a bit of a worry because we haven't found the source of the spread yet. Is that all I understand?
No, that's correct. We found a couple of very large source populations. Unfortunately, don't want to make assumptions, but it looked like a plane or something like that in situ. And unfortunately, off the back of that, we have seen substantial local.
We've got two recommendations here, Marty. So we're going to vote. So, if it's not passed by vote, maybe we can come back to it. So any other discussion? All right. So we've got Jack and Rick have moved it, seconded it. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. One against. Marty. Okay. Then at 7.2. Adoption of proposed regional plan for Northland. And I hope Rick is still online.
He's gone.
Okay, Rick wanted to move this. He sent me a text this morning saying he's been part of his 9 years on council. That's what he's been working on. So we've got 5 recommendations here. Do I have, and we've got, do we have Michael Payne in the room?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good to see you, Michael. Okay, so do we have a mover and a second?
I'm happy to move.
I'll second it.
Okay, all right. Okay, so righto, Tui, you moved it, and then Amy.
Kia ora. I want to acknowledge the length of time that this took. 9 years ago, I would have still been working for iwi and hapu, and we would have just, gotten through the regional policy statement, which was big enough, and then come through into the regional plan. I know it has a lot of expectations of Māori through that. I know that there's been a lot to resolve through the process. My only comment on it would be, because it is such a long development of the document, that I feel like it actually doesn't really reflect our existing treaty-based relationships that we have. You know, the work that we're doing with iwi and hapu on the ground. But we can be mindful of that, you know, because we do promote that sort of work elsewhere. But yeah, and moving forward, you know, things monitoring that are really just becoming norm, you know, for everyone, but wouldn't have been that 9 years ago. And the setting out of these sorts of things, the request from hapu to do catchment management plans, and the potential for having included some tools that we are currently even using around Rahui Moana, or whatever you'd like to call that, establishing Māori reserves that are incorporating tikanga and culture for the betterment and the bounce back restoration of the environment. So yeah, just wanting to note those sorts of things, and we still acknowledge that there are systemic inequities in the system, and whilst this may not be perfect for everybody, it's giving us a great direction and moving forward. Yes, that's all I have to say. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to everybody. Kia ora.
Okay, Amy.
Kia ora, Tui. Good comment. I think I just want to acknowledge the team that have carried out all this work. It's been a really long time, but I think we can be proud that during that time we put a lot of effort into our reaching shared understanding and the sort of the mediation and negotiation that goes on with all the different stakeholders and everything. You know, everyone's got kind of a slightly different position that they're bringing to those discussions. I feel it means that we've got a really strong document, that we've run such a thorough process. I have some real reservations about where to from here with the signals from central government around the RMA, but I guess we know that this is a really good foundational document for resource management for our region, and we will use the guidance that this provides, long term, no doubt, into the future. But the relationships that have been built and the shared understanding that has been built is going to be really important as we move forward as a region into the new future of resource management, whatever that looks like. So yeah, big thanks to the team, massive effort, and I guess props to the councillors in the past as well, because it's been through a few terms of council, and some of them were really heavily involved in, from a governance perspective, getting the journey, continuing on the journey and to get us to this point. But yeah, an awesome milestone, and Rick is very proud and sad to miss this moment, I'm sure.
All right, well, thanks, Michael. Good to see you in the room. Did you start off this plan at the start 9 years ago?
Oh.
You did? And you still got your hair. A lot of people who start things here lose their hair in time. Okay, so well done. So we've got no other comments. We've got a mover and a seconder. All in favour?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Against? Passed. All right, let's bring attention to page 69, item 7.3. Fast Track Approval Act. Just a council process of delegations. We've got 3 people here. We've got 2 recommendations. The staff have recommended.
Hearing our conflicts.
Okay. Yep. And you have to say what they are. You're just declaring.
Oh, so declaring our conflicts that all 3 iwi have active proposals in this space.
Okay. All right. Do you have, did I remove? No. No. Okay. All right. Okay. So
And Mr. Chair, just on that note of interests, you will recall that at the beginning of this meeting, I raised the fact that I've been elected the chair of Te Runganui o Te Aupōuri. So in that respect, I am mindful of the paper. Kia ora.
okay. So we've got the attachment here is a recommendation to item 3. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move.
Okay. Okay. Discussion, please. You've been over this at workshop.
I'd just like to get some examples of points of law that can be appealed on. Talked about points of law that appeals on decisions can be made on points of law by persons or parties entitled. It seems as though appeals are only on points of law, not on points of fact. So just get some examples of.
Okay, we've got Reuben here. He's just nodded his head.
Kia ora, Chair. I won't be able to answer that question, I'm afraid, because there are no examples because it's a new act. So the take home is the points of law would be on whether or not the decision reflects the intent and purpose of the Fast Track Approval Act. So, yeah, because it's new legislation, we can expect that there will be a number of appeals to those points of law. As those appeals are brought forward, we'll be able to build a better understanding of some of the provisions where there's quite a lot of grey area. So an example is sort of the role of commentary, which is the role that council's retained delegations for in the decision-making process, and the weight to be given to that commentary when expert panel is making a decision. There's a lot of grey in that space. We just have to remember that the fundamental purpose of the Act is to, I'm paraphrasing, enable development. And so a court would look at whether or not fundamentally a decision is giving effect to that purpose, but of course within all the constraints of other sections within the Act.
So just as a question to that then, okay, but fast track approval will be given to this, yet it may cause nuisance or trespass to neighbouring activities. Is that regarded as a point of law, or?
It would be. I couldn't answer that, Marty, because there's a lot of context that you'd need to take into account. So an expert panel is required to look at the environmental effects of an activity. So an applicant is required to provide an assessment of environmental effects within the same scope of the Resource Management Act, but it comes down to the weight that's given to those effects over and above the purpose of the Act. And that is where you will start to see challenges coming before the court. And ultimately the High Court is going to need to make determinations around that. So quick answer is there are no examples, and it's really great.
Yeah, right.
I did see, Colin, you want to have a reference point for that?
Through the chair, generally speaking, points of law generally revolve around interpretation of the legislation provisions. So it's a matter of how a party interprets what it is. Like the definition of contaminant is a point of law. It's a legal, because it's a definition. It's a matter of how it's been interpreted. So that's an example of a point of law.
Okay, we got Chip. Yep, happy with that response?
Yeah, well, so what they're doing, taking the bottle and see how it all settles down.
Yeah, okay. Joe Carr.
Yeah, just get the mic on there. All good?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, look, I've got a sort of a basic concern about the whole process, in that we submitted against this NRC. I voted against it, but we as a council submitted against the fast track legislation. The way we're proposing to run this is effectively we're empowering our staff to drive this whole process with any applications. The staff are selecting the commissioners that they're probably going to want to select one from to run it. We noticed that in our submissions we refer to our iwi partners and how our treaty partners are disadvantaged by this legislation, yet in reality it is these very people, iwi, who have got fast track applications that they're trying to get past NRC's process. That's why they're doing it, and it's a little bit of a it's conflicting forces working all the way through on this, and I'm not happy with it. So your alternative is if you have an effective planning committee on council, and we don't have the capacity amongst our councillors to do that. So, but yeah, I'm going to abstain from voting on this because I'm just quite unhappy with the whole process. Thank you.
Yeah, Jono, you had a response to that?
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora, Councillor Carr. In the NRC submission on it. Just to clarify, if you have a look at the top of page 77, one of the main opportunities that council has in the fast track process is to make comment on a proposal, and that one there isn't delegated to staff. That resides with council, so it's a full council decision for any comments on a proposal. And the other key opportunity for council in the fast track legislation is the appointment of a person onto the expert panels, and that's the final row in the table on page 78, which again that resides with staff. The rest of them were sort of the technical and administrative functions of it, but equally if there are aspects in there that are sitting with staff that council wants to reside with council, that's up to council to clarify. This was staff's interpretation of the feedback that we got from the workshop with councillors around council wanting to retain the decision making on those two key aspects, which is comments on a proposal and appointment of members onto the panel, acknowledging the tight timeframes for those other more technical aspects of the legislation, with delegations to staff for those.
Thank you, John.
Okay, we've got two shortly.
Thank you. I think it's really clear. And what I would like to see, just for councils to have some kind of idea of which of the list of the fast track applications we would likely to be asked to be on an expert panel. That's one. I think in terms of the other delegations, I agree with Jono. We're trying to work with the cards we've been dealt with, Councillor Carr. We're in this situation now when our staff have come up with the most efficient way that we can respond within our mandate and our responsibilities that we continue to have as regional council. So I'm more interested in looking at us as councils having a full understanding of when Jono and Ruben and the team will be, working away in the background on these things, but also more importantly, when we as councils will be called upon to either make, a decision about the two that are set out in the table, regardless of whether or not the applications have been put on by Māori. There were Pākehā that opposed it too as well. I like to say through the chair, it wasn't just, the fast tracking processes, because they see the erosion direction of local decision making. And we've shared that with the ministers, and we're all still very comfortable with one another. Thankfully, we can, we have to continue to work professionally through this. So that's just, one question, and the other one is I total for this. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to wrap it up. No more discussion.
Did you hear my question?
I'd like us to be reassure ourselves that if we pass these two recommendations as is, that means that we are going with option 3, delegations with council. As long as everyone's aware of that.
Yep.
Delegations to panel nominations. Okay.
Charlie had a question.
Yep. Can you please define your question, please?
What projects will regional council be asked to be on expert panels for? What are the likely projects? Is it all 17, or do we have any guidance from the staff? Thank you.
Kia ora, Chair, kia ora tui. We plan to hold a workshop to go through the listed projects and firstly get a steer from council around what are those that there is a particular interest in. And at that point, we'll be able to sort of identify those, because basically we have the opportunity to nominate a expert panelist. And so there'll be an opportunity to have a conversation around, again, at the same time, whether or not that's something that we would look to do.
Okay. Sounds like we've had a good discussion around. Thank you, Reuben, for your comments. So we've got Marty and Jack, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay, passed.
And just one question, Mr. Chair, my hand was up, and it's one of clarification. Do we have any profile information around what an expert panelist looks like? I think that might be helpful for elected members to understand what that looks like moving forward, and more of a note rather than a request for information on the hop. Kia ora.
Okay. We'll move on to
Just quickly, yes, Councillor Jones, we'll be coming back to workshop the proposals from what I understand from what Reuben said, and we do have some information around qualifications, criteria, what attributes you'd look like for you'd look to have in a panel member, and we can provide that to councillors for your feedback in advance of needing to then make that decision on any particular application.
Okay. So, Chair.
Yep.
Chair.
Yep.
Joe Carr here. Yeah, just one matter of clarification. We approved at very short notice, without the usual protocols that RIC requires, $100,000 funding to be available for getting expert information together regarding these fast track proposals. Now, just would like made clear by the CEO that this funding can be used to actually support a proposal, not just to resist it. There's got to be agnostic the way it's used. Is that correct?
Yes, Johnny.
Kia ora, Chair. Again, I'm going to look to Reuben as I speak here, but yes, the paper. So a paper was brought to council for the identification of that $100,000, and that paper was neutral on whether council was going to oppose or support any application. It was there to support council to make comment on a proposal, and that comment could be in support or opposition, depending on the assessment that council makes and the advice it receives.
Yes, because the reason why I'm asking this question is the Lake Amapri trustees have asked me what resources council has to assist them. So I assume that they've got access through council to potentially use this fund.
Kia ora, Chair. Just to clarify, the fund is available for council, not for proponents of proposals. However, if council made the decision that it didn't, because it's got a process in the regulatory framework for fast track proposals, that it wasn't going to proactively or in advance of making a comment provide support for any proponents of those fast track proposals. That it wanted to reserve its neutrality to assess a proposal as and when it was lodged.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, and I think for me to have any further discussion, we're beyond this meeting, so I would like to discuss it further at another time. Yeah.
Very happy to, Councillor Carr.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you,
that was,
Chair.
we've already passed previous one, so we're on to 7.4, page 78, retrospective approval of the gene technology bill submission.
I'm happy to move.
I'm having a second.
With the addition to, if I may, addition 3, the council seek endorsement of our submission from the council's concerned with the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs.
Inter-council, so you're saying like with Whanau and...
Yeah, Whanau, Pangarei, Kaipara, it was Rodney at the time, so it's Auckland Unitary Authority in that with the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs. I'm saying seek endorsement of so that it's support of that submission.
But this is already...
How does that occur, Mr. Chair?
Sorry, Peter Lucas, this is already supporting a submission that's already gone to.
I know, that's right. This is...
this is not a discussion to have here.
Well, I'm just asking for, in addition to this, we seek endorsement of this submission from the councils who are concerned with that collaborative process.
Well, I think it needs to come back if you want to bring this, because this is something that's already gone to government.
Yes, I know it has. Yeah.
Okay, so all we're doing is just, this is a tick box thing.
Yep. So,
okay, this isn't adding anything to it.
Yeah. Well, what I'm asking, and this is what I'm moving in recommendation 3, that we seek the endorsement of the other parties to that Inter-Council Working Party, because this is actually affirming.
But this is supporting this letter.
Yes, it is. No, this is supporting this letter from Regional Council. It's a retrospective approval.
I think you need to bring this up at another time, Marty. You need to bring this up at another meeting, because this is not signing this off.
Well,
you can't add something to something that's already gone to government.
I'm happy to do it in 3 parts: to receive, to endorse, and then to seek the endorsement of the councils who are involved with the Inter-Council Working Party. If it gets voted down, absolutely fine. But if it gets supported, then I'd really like to have that supporting letter from the other region, from the other councils who are involved with the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs, which is really.
But the government's already received this letter.
Yes, it has.
So that means we have to send another one.
No, we don't have to send another one. We're asking for a letter of approval of endorsement from the other parties. It's just the process is not over. The gene technology bill is not being approved. It hasn't had its second reading yet. It's still in hearings.
Well, you've got your rights to bring up a recommendation if you'd like to.
Well, I'm putting that forward. Yes, please.
Okay. Well,
as a recommendation, if to happy to second that. If it lapses for want of a second, then so be it.
Okay. Well, let's move on. So, what are your words?
Well, I'm moving that council seek endorsement of our submission from the other parties to the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs.
And that'll be under item 3.
Yeah, that'll be recommendation 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder for the first.
No, we haven't got a seconder yet.
Okay.
You have to see if Tui was.
Okay, so Marty, you're the mover of the recommendation. Yeah. We have a seconder.
Mr. Chair, before we do that, can we just socialise this idea so we understand exactly what the words represent? Because I think the idea that sits behind the words could perhaps be better articulated. Would it be correct, Marty, if I was to think that this is about strategically aligning our thinking with our sister councils, and also looking at this as an opportunity to better understand their individual 3 positions on this bill and seeing if there is alignment? or endorsement for our position. Is that correct? I just want to understand what we're being asked to do, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that's correct. And in a way, Peter Lucas, it's I know that Far North District Council put in a submission to the Gene Technology Bill. It was too short notice for Whangarei to put it forward, but all councils were involved with the process through this collaborative process through the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs, and that's why I was successful in being included in the Auckland Unitary Authority in their plan, in our regional policy statement, and also in 2 district plans. So I'd like just to have that emphasised to central government by endorsing our submission.
Well, I'd like some advice.
To occur, Mr. Chair, would we then need to deal with each of these recommendations individually? And because we're being asked to retrospectively approve a submission that's already been made to government, and it sounds as though what's being recommended by Marty is some follow-up footwork, which includes understanding the position, albeit thinking of each of the councils individually, because they might have different thoughts on the matter. Is that what we're being asked to do?
Absolutely, yes. So we can have each recommendation, vote for each recommendation. But I still haven't got a seconder on my recommendation, so I may just lapse.
Well, we need to find out exactly all that information. I see that Jono and then Tui. Tui.
Kia ora. I have some understanding of what you're talking about, Marty, having been involved in the earlier GE discussions whilst we were going through the regional policy statement, whilst the federated farmers wanted, pretty much what this bill is doing, and we had to go to the High Court to defend the stance of hapu and local communities to ensure that, well, very much what we're saying in the submission, again, local decision making on these things that will impact on local farmers and our seed, our heritage seed. And, we haven't seen good experiences of farmers even in America of Monsanto, encroaching on their own seed, and then now they have to pay. They have to pay for it. So we're very clear on what this sort of thing is. Back to your addition, Marty, the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs Risk Evaluation and Management Group, that also includes Auckland. It's a North Auckland working group, and I have no idea of how relevant it is today. I'm just being honest. When was the last time it met? I'd say, it's been 10 years or so, perhaps, Marty. Are you wanting to reinitiate that? If you are wanting to reinitiate that, maybe it's a political thing that our council, if we decide it's of benefit, that we go ahead and we, work with our staff to reinvigorate it. But I'm not. This is about a retrospective, as the chair's trying to explain, about a retrospective submission. I'm happy for us to reach out and see if we still, us stand together. But I'm sure you can understand it could take some time because we have new mayors, we have new councillors on Kaipara and Auckland. That it may take some time for them to work through it. So I think if that's what you're wanting, I'm okay to do it. But I don't think we need a formal decision. I think we need to reach out politically and, work through it that way. And then just while I have the mic, because I may not get the chance to speak again, I do second the first 2. I'm generally okay with the third if I'm on the right lines of it. And do we have the opportunity to speak to it? I see our submission says that, we would be open to share further. We're in hearings now. I would like to speak to this to the select committee if we do have the chance. Just putting that out there while this is on the agenda. So that's everything from me. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to bring up Marty now. This group that you're talking about, this council group, the last time they met was 2014. Is that correct?
I don't know when they last met, and I don't.
No, that's what you said at our last meeting.
Yeah, I'm not expecting them to re-meet because that's both a cost in terms of time and money.
That's 11 years ago.
Yeah. So what I'm asking for then is, are they still keen to defend what they put into their plans?
Well, I think you need to go and do your homework before a meeting like this.
Right. It was just a request from one council to another to say, we already know that Far North District Council agrees with it. They put in a submission. Whangarei District Council didn't have time to put in a submission, so they haven't, but they may still be keen to defend their plan. Also Auckland as well. So that's what I'm asking for. It's a formal way of asking for a letter from those councils rather than having to relitigate the council working paper.
Okay, so you finished talking there. We've got Joe Carr and then Peter Lucas with their hands up.
You're on mute, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Yeah, just a very brief comment. Look, what we're doing in this instance is that we're actually not nuancing our submission at all. The review of genetic engineering can be quite nuanced and sophisticated. You can actually confine it in manners that have broad public support and not let it get. You don't need such a draconian regulation that is currently prevailing, and we don't have a nuanced submission at all. And I don't support the submission. I think we had a chance to actually talk about crypto and how we can have some level of genetic engineering that is acceptable, and define areas that we don't find acceptable, and we haven't done that. And that's why Parliament is considering revising the legislation, and I support the revision. I'm not trying to say how it should be done, but to actually oppose the revision, I think, is not defendable. Thank you.
Okay, Peter Lucas.
So, sorry, just as a response to the, if I may, just in the submission, it actually states that the intent is not to prevent the general release of GMOs, but to trigger a plan change if one comes forward.
Okay, you respond. Yeah. Okay, Peter Lucas.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Look, I'm in support of the retrospective approval of the submission. I'm trying to understand the third recommendation, and I'm just wondering if it's better dealt with separately. It sounds more like a strategic alignment suggestion that's helps us to understand what the position of our sister councils are. I just mentioned that because I do believe that we need to, strengthen Māori consultation and decision making, ensuring the protection of Indigenous biodiversity and taonga species. And I also think that it's important that local government control over GMOs is retained. I think those are important things that I would like to understand from the point of view of the sister councils, particularly in so much as rural communities are concerned, and what we've learnt from GMO farming in states in America, what we've learned about vulnerable communities and the placement of plantations, who works on them, how pesticides are used, and the impact of that on the larger ecosystem. So in that sense, I do support what Marty is putting forward, and Tui's spoken in support of it. I'm just not sure if it sits well in this agenda item. It is related, but I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, how we best deal with that. Important, very much so. I support Tui speaking to the submission in the event the opportunity arises. Kia ora.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Marty, you've got a mover. There is no, at this moment, is there any seconder?
I'd second just for so we can debate that out. I'm sympathetic.
take them separately.
Yeah, just a,
Yeah.
just a suggestion. You've got a, if I may, just a suggestion, and it builds on what I think Peter Lucas has just said and what you guys have just. You've got two resolutions that are on the table at the moment. You've got a mover and a second for it. Have a vote on that.
Yep.
Marty, then if you want to put another resolution to the floor and you get a seconder, then yes, you can vote on that. And I'll wait until you get a mover and a second to that to provide some more korero, if I may.
All right, let's go back to recommendations 1 and 2. We have a mover, Marty and Tui. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Joe?
Before Marty puts anything, Jono, did you have any advice about wording that would be helpful? Or from a
I think Marty's wording was okay. Was fine.
Let Chris read that out.
That council seeks endorsement of its submission with the other parties within the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs.
Okay, so we've got a mover, Marty, and a seconder, Jack.
Can I just make a suggestion that endorsement doesn't give us the opportunity to understand their point of view? I'm not particularly concerned of whether they endorse our submission because it's our submission. What's important is that we endorse it. What I would like to understand is where they sit on the strategic priorities that we have contained within our submission. That alignment, I think, is missed if we seek their endorsement. I'm not concerned about that because it doesn't relate to our submission, which we've just endorsed. I just would like to understand why we would seek their endorsement. I think it's better to understand their position on this particular issue.
Do you want to change the word from endorsement to position?
I agree with that. I got the same concern. Endorse is too limited because really the question is, are we all still on the same page as we were 10 years ago? And do we want to somehow, strengthen that position as a Upper North Island? So that's why I wanted Jono to give us the word.
Here's the, I think I've just looked at the definition. An endorsement is a form of public support or approval. If you give something an endorsement, you're basically saying, I approve of this personal product, or I approve of this letter. That's in my view, an agreement with it. So you're still aligned to it. And so that's really what I want, is that the members of the Inter-Council Working Party are still aligned with that, the objectives of this submission and the objectives of the results of the Inter-Council Working Party on GMOs.
Okay, last question.
That's why you
Julie, because we really need to move this on. If you don't mind, I see you got your hand up.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I actually agree with Councillor Jones. Like back 10 years ago, the Inter-Council Working Group worked on whether or not we should have council should have jurisdiction on making decisions around genetic engineering. Because that was the big thing that was going on. The Federated Farmers wanted the EPA to say it, to do it, to decide. The EPA didn't even want to do it. Dr. Monica Henare spoke out about it. The Federated Farmers didn't want us to have it in our regional policy statement as a significant issue for the region, even though that was identified as that by Tangata Whenua. Joe, if you're looking for specifics, there's lots and lots of High Court evidence that backed the case when the Federated Farmers appealed it through the courts. There's also the iwi and hapu, so it's not like everything. No, there's very specific concerns and very evidenced concerns. So let's not just generalize it. Maybe we can, share some reports so that you can read it as well. So, what we want to know is whether or not, what's their stance? Not that do they support our stance? Do they endorse our letter? But what's Auckland Council's stance now? Again, I think we don't need a resolution to reach out to work on it with them. But I'm not fundamentally opposed to it. So I'm happy for it to go through. Thank you. That's me.
Since you've asked Jono to word it, Jono's been writing it down.
And the wording that appreciate that it's done extremely quickly. I think it's worth making the point that it's going to the member councils, because given the time that has passed since the last meeting of the GMO Inter-Council Working Party, I think there would be questions from some of those member councils as to whether they'd actually exist still, and to try and get a position from the working party might not be an easy avenue to follow. So my suggestion is to go to the member councils. So my suggested wording is that council seek confirmation on the position from the GMO Inter-Council Working Party member councils on the strategic points raised in the NRC submission. So you guys have raised a number of points in your submission on GMOs, and we would draft a letter to those member councils, providing them a copy of our submission and the points that are highlighted in there, and asking for those councils to provide confirmation of their position with respect to
Happy with that, Marty?
those points.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay,
Yep.
we'll just get Chris to finalise it before we vote on it, so we know that the wording is as we want it.
That council seeks confirmation on the position from the Inter-Council GMO Working Party, whatever the correct title is, member councils on the strategic points raised within NRC's submission.
Okay, so we've got Marty and Jack have moved it and seconded. All in favour?
Got one hand up.
Aye.
Sorry, where was the hand?
Joe, take it down there.
Okay. Right, against? Okay, passed. Thanks. Thanks for your time. Right, okay. Item 7.5, applications to be added to the council's list of approved RMA hearing commissioners. There's 3 people here. We've got 4 recommendations.
I have a conflict. I know one of the commissioners.
Okay. No other conflicts? Deanne?
Oh, yeah.
Same,
Okay.
it's one of the.
All right, okay. Okay, so we're looking, we've got 4 recommendations.
I'm happy to move.
All 4?
Yeah.
Okay, if I have a seconder? All 4?
And that's for option 5.
I'll second it.
Okay, Marty and Jack. We have workshopped these people. Do you want to add anything, Marty?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Jack?
No.
Okay, all in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, passed. All right, so we've got the 7.6. This is a big one for Jono. Agreement with Fire and Emergency New Zealand on a multi-agency joint emergency coordination centre. We've got old Phil Heatley here. We've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 5 recommendations from Phil. So do I have a mover and a seconder?
Very generous.
I'll second it. Okay, John, you've moved it.
I should have Rick who moved this because he's been on this all.
Yeah.
I think it's a long time coming, and it's going to help Northland in a big way. So yeah.
Just like Jono to talk about it, he's been working on this very difficult, trying to get agreements done, and it's been quite frustrating, Jono. I know that you mentioned me a couple of times. So where are we now with it?
Kia ora, Chair, and just acknowledge the team, Phil and Louisa, and Graham McDonald have been working on this. You've previously approved the funding. District councils have approved their funding. Minister has come to the table with an additional $1 million to make the project have the budget that we need. You've previously approved an agreement for councils to go to agree how we're going to work it, and that has now all been signed between all 4 participating councils. This here is the agreement between Northland Regional Council and FENZ. You've got the non-binding heads of agreement before us today. It has taken quite a while to negotiate it with FENZ. It's a new approach and a new way of a partnership between councils and FENZ. It's a really good way, and I think FENZ has taken their time to have a look at it, because they're also aware that it's a new way and that other regions may look at doing something similar. It's got the distinct advantage of during peace times, when there's no actual emergency, that we've got our staff, our civil defence staff and FENZ staff co-located in the one building, which I think is a really big bonus of doing a proposal like this. It's great that Fens have been able to contribute their land. They're not able to contribute any cash, but they are able to contribute land to the proposal, and it's just been the complexity of working through something that's new, and with their constraints that they've got. We now have, though, a heads of agreement that we are on the same page with, and we will proceed with the binding development agreement that gives effect to the heads of agreement. If there's any material significant departures in the development agreement from what's in the heads of agreement, then we'll come back to yourselves.
Nothing to add, Phil?
Nothing to add.
Good. Okay, all in favour?
Sorry.
Yeah, Joe's got his hand up as well.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I just had one question to the chief executive. Is have I got the understanding correct that FEMS Whangarei administration are going to be solely transferred to this new building, so that it's going to be their sole administration centre?
Correct. We'll be co-locating with them, so they'll have to move out for the construction period, and then because we're demolishing a number of their buildings that are currently on their site there, Joe.
Yeah,
they'll be moving out during the construction period, and then they will co-locate with our civil defence staff in the new building.
Okay, so they're going to be the predominant user of the building in reality.
My recollection is it's 60-40 split. I'm looking at Phil as I'm speaking.
Yes, it's roughly a 60-40 split. The staff that are coming from FENS aren't broad administration staff, though they are essentially the key CDE, the civil defence response staff, and ancillary workers to that. So they have sort of common daily roles with our CDM team.
Okay, so other administrative staff of FEMS Whangarei are not going to be in this building?
Oh, I can't rule out that one or two won't be there, but by majority, the FENS staff are civil defence related.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to be assured that the sharing of operational costs was reasonably proportional. So that was where I was heading, and I think you're inferring that.
Okay, Deanne, you got a question?
Just a simple question, John. Mindful that our advice is to try and ensure that money is growing. If the drawdown of the whole doesn't happen straight away, and that it comes out the milestone, so you're still earning interest off that money.
We are, yes.
Okay, so we've got John.
Just have one question. Until Tranche 1 is completed, it shouldn't preclude the CE from, if something bigger, brighter, better comes along, that there's the ability to say, okay, this is better. It seems though we're locked into it.
What do you mean, until there's a building?
I don't know. Yeah, perhaps a better building or a better option comes along. I don't think we should be shut off from that. I think there's something that actually precludes us from doing that.
I think this will go out to tender.
Yeah, after Tranche 1.
Yeah, so like once it's...
Yeah, once Tranche 1 is
agreed on that plan.
Tranche 1 is completed, I think we should still be open to it.
No.
If a great opportunity presents itself, yes, we won't preclude ourselves from it.
Yes.
I haven't signed anything yet, but once we have signed up to something, then yes, that opportunity is gone. We are pretty confident, though, given the partnership that this provides and the fact that we don't actually have to invest in purchasing land ourselves, that this is the most cost-efficient option available for us.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to wobble because it's taken over 12 months.
Yep.
From it to get it even to a signed position. So very, very difficult. So, okay. Any more discussion? So all in favour?
Aye.
Against? No, passed.
Yay.
Yay.
Woo.
Old Phil, you can leave the room.
Yeah, old Phil.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that, old Phil.
Well done, Phil, Louisa.
Go Phil.
We're at
Okay,
school
go,
together,
Phil.
you realise that.
You look younger than you are. Okay, Chair's report. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
You have to move that, Chair.
Okay, Jack.
No, you move it. It's your report, you move it, I second it.
Okay.
That's how we do things.
Okay, any discussion?
Next.
It's pretty light.
Yep.
Okay. All in favour?
Aye.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, now the big report was the chief executive, point 2. Okay, shall we get John? Do I have a seconder for the chief executive's report? I've got John and Jeff.
Second.
Too late.
Who did?
Too late. Okay, John.
Pretty impressive, the wastewater systems. They've sort of improved. The best report I've ever seen, I think.
What happened? Okay, Colin's been doing an outstanding job, is what you should say, John.
That's Colin.
I think there's through you, Mr. Chair, there's a lot of focus on our wastewater, three waters. There's been a lot of focus from Colin and his team, but equally there's been a lot of focus from the district council's staff to try and improve those outcomes. So it's just an acknowledgement, I guess, of considerable effort that's going into it, but also noting that there's still work to be done.
You're doing quite a lot of it with Kyo. I just wonder about the population of Kyo, because it's I think it's 200 people live there. You've got to be, you be careful we don't spend a lot of money on an area that maybe can be very hard to fix in the long term.
With the river scheme?
Flood management.
I think that's to do with the highway as well as just not in the town, is it?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, no other discussions around Jono's report?
Hang on, Mr. Chairman.
Come on, you should have all that tab.
I'd like to applaud the work of the biosecurity and biodiversity team for doing that lake surveys in the far north. That looked pretty impressive. What other note did I make? Carrier protection. So I've just sent an email to the CE about. I think we need a further report on how we're going with carrier protection at the moment. We haven't had a comprehensive report for a couple of years on that, so I've just requested that. Our field days, I'd like to congratulate our staff for the design and the running of that display. There was a lot of staff there, and they were really attending to the public requests immediately. They did a great job. So it's fantastic. I can report that the stoning of the buses at Otongaray has ceased. The police are on the case. We've heard no more reports from that. So thank you very much. And that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Now discussions. So all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay, it's passed. Okay, so we need to go into confidential.
9.1, Mr. Chair.
9.1. Okay, yeah, 9.1. Sorry, page 175. Okay, do I have a mover and a second?
I'll move.
Okay, Amy, you've been quiet.
I'll second.
Today. Jack, you've been into it. Okay, it's just standard procedure. I'd take it. All in favour? Aye. Passed. Against? Right.
Okay, while we're on that, I'd just like to ask to note that retirement of Graham McDonald, and I was very honoured to be able to speak at his farewell do on behalf of councillors. And he also, there were some amazing speeches given by people from the police and FEMA. Also, Toss Kitchen came down as previous chair of Civil Defence, I think for 10 odd years, gave a wonderful speech from the heart, on behalf of all of us, really, for the wonderful work that Graham has done for the last 25 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's right. Okay, we can pass that one. Yes, we're on to working parties 9.2, page 182. And I think Marty was keen to do something.
Yeah, he was.
Marty. Okay, so anybody like to talk about the updates? I've only got 2 there.
No.
Okay, so Rick's missing, I think 2 is offline, so all in favour?
Aye.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, passed. All right, now it's when we
I'm
go
still
into,
here. Support that. Thank you.
okay, now we go into business with public excluded.
Happy to move.
Okay, we're going to move it by Martin.
Happy to second it.
Seconded by John. Shall we off the line?